I'd like to thank you all for braving the Manchester snow apocalypse tonight to come down, so a few people haven't braved it. But it's all you guys in this room, the makers of the brand and the got us to being 50. Founders, employees, old and new, retailers, consumers to be. Each one of you played a part in our history over the last 50 years. So I'd like to say a quick cheers to that. So, cheers to 50 years. Cheers. Cheers. More. Cheers. Okay, guys, so without further ado, I'm trusted the Master of Ceremonies.
Nicely done, Dunk. Let's have a round of applause for Dunk. Come on. Well, as Dunk says, thanks for joining us on this typically Mancunian evening. Very honoured to be here tonight. My name's Neil, by the way, if you don't know me, Neil Summers. I'm honoured to be on the same stage as these people here. So we've got the two founders of Sprayway, Simon, John, and we've got the authors of a pretty cool book that's just come out, Mountain Style, Max and Henry. So for me, purely from a personal perspective, I just want to get the lowdown on Sprayway because for me it's a bit of a paradoxical brand. It's like it's a household name, but I don't know that much about it. So I'm going to get nosy. So let's start things off. When did you two first meet? Have you got a microphone, by the way?
Yeah. First meet. We were at school together.
Yeah. Do we need that? Can people hear us?
Yeah. Use mine.
Yeah.
So do I need to turn this on? Can you hear me? Right. So we were at school.
High school together.
Well, we lived literally half a mile apart when we were born. We're born in 1955. Simon's March. I'm June. So 3 months apart. So he's older than me. He probably looks it, I know.
Yeah.
My mum and dad, for some strange reasons, decided to send me to a primary school about 2 miles away. He went to the school that was next door, but one to where we lived, which is a right bummer because we didn't, well, I had to walk for miles and he didn't. And then we kind of were aware of each other, but we went to the same secondary school and just became mates.
Yeah.
And whereabouts was it? What, Flixton? Yeah. Flixton, which is referred to as Wellacre.
Yeah.
Wellacre, yeah?
And so let's cut. So it's 50 years ago, 1974. You both left school, and you sort of realised you didn't want to do what you sort of wanted to do. Is that right?
Yeah.
Take us back to that early 70s. What was going on with you guys?
You all need mics.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I left school at 16. Simon left school at 16. Simon went to building college. I went in the Merchant Navy. Not because I particularly wanted to be in the Merchant Navy, but I couldn't think of anything better to do. I didn't want to go A-levels, didn't want to do uni, just wanted to do something. Did a few voyages, decided I knew at that point this wasn't for me for life. Sent him a few letters. We didn't have emails, we didn't have telephones, and so you used to write on a little airmail letter.
Yes.
Told him I was going to pack it in, and he said, "Well, you know what? I'm sure we can do something together."
Yeah, let's do something together.
Most of the big ideas were Simon's. I come up with the small ideas. So he said, "Look, why don't we do something together?" I'm not particularly enamoured with building college either. So that was it, really.
We did have no money.
Yeah, we had nothing.
Which was a bit of a problem. So, and my parents were not over the moon about me dropping out of college. So we just got factory jobs. And we decided that we needed to get a bit of money. So we worked in a factory. I worked in a clothing factory. And you worked in an engineering?
I worked in engineering works. We saved up I had a camera, sold that. We're both into sailing. That's the sport we're into, not climbing or walking. We're into sailing dinghies, racing them. And that was at the age of 18, so we could drive, we could go down to Lee Flash.
Yeah.
We both had an enterprise racing dinghy, we sailed. And once we decided we were going to start making a one-piece sailing overall, which we'll come on to, I sold the boat, sold the camera, and we had about 800 quid each to start with. And our parents, you know the details of that.
Yeah, we were quite lucky in so much that our parents, John's father had run a business, my dad worked in accountancy, and they guaranteed a £3,000 bank overdraft for us at Midland Bank.
So starting capital of under 5,000 quid, which I know today would be 50,000, but you couldn't start the business that you couldn't do it anymore. In those days, we could pinch here, pinch there, and do it. So we knew there was a market for a one-piece sailing suit, and we managed to find that the fabrics were made by a company in Dewsbury called Carrington Performance Fabrics. And it was a 4-ounce nylon with a coating of polyurethane. And this one-piece suit was in huge demand, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we just copied it and made a few various changes that we thought could be improved. And demand was just there. We were cutting the garments out in my father's. They had a flat roof sun lounge at the back of the house. And we put a load of old internal doors down, had Stanley knives and cardboard patterns, cut the shapes out. Simon found an outworker.
I was a
somewhere
machinist who has worked
in Stretford who made a few one-piece suits for us. We looked at the adverts that were in Yachts and Yachting, wrote to the retailers saying that we can offer you this, and it took off.
You hear about musicians saying, well, I went for years and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not boasting. We were just an absolute overnight success. What John is very modest about is he'd come up and had made the design of the jacket, the overall, better than what was available in the marketplace at that moment in time, considerably better. He also came up with the idea of making the prices like an order form. So we sent that out with a letter which his mum had typed up for us to sort of say, hey, we're getting this business going. Would you like to buy some sailing overalls from us? And literally within about 3 or 4 weeks, we were selling 20 every day.
Yeah, the first order came from a guy called, was it Bill Gore? Not Gore of Gore-Tex, but it was Boats and Sports in Chester at the time. They're not there anymore. He gave us an order for 12 one-piece suits. This machinist made them up, we shipped them out, and then we started to mail out to all the other retailers in Yachts and Yachting, got more orders, realised we couldn't fulfil that with one machinist in Stretford, so we found a little corner shop in Chorlton, which got demolished, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We had 3 machinists there, and we were working 7 days a week. We were doing the cutting at the weekend. Machinists started sewing Monday to Friday. One of us would go on the road, showing retailers what we'd got, and business just took off.
I mean, within 6 weeks, we were selling 100 of these every week. And we relatively recently, we kind of did a bit of a costing on it. We reckoned it would be about £50 trade price. So we were 2 19-year-old lads with a business turnover 5,000 quid a week. So just decided, well, we'll do it to have a go at it, sort of thing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So
So your next question, Neil, is how did we get into outdoors?
Exactly that.
Go on, Neil.
How did you get into outdoors?
Well, very interesting you should ask that, Neil. There's an outdoor shop, or was an outdoor shop at Brigham's, subsequently took it over, and it was Stubbs Outdoor Sports on the corner of, do you remember Ellis? Is Ellis still here? Yeah, well done, Ellis.
That's Ellis of Ellis Brigham.
Ellis Brigham.
Legend in the building.
Yeah. So Len rang us up and said, hi, Outdoor Sports here, I'd like you to make a jacket. And it subsequently turned out this was G&H Products Cag Jack. And to their credit, they were the first people, Henry Lloyd and Peter Stummer both got zipped through jackets, but they were first people to really make an outdoor jacket. And demand was huge, and they were on about 16 to 20 weeks delivery time. And Len was saying, could you not make me some of these, because I can't get hold of them? And it was the same fabric. It was a fluorescent orange PU-coated nylon jacket. So we looked at it, and the jacket had raglan sleeves, 2 pockets, hood. And so we thought, right, well, we can probably make a better job of this by eliminating the seams, because that's on the shoulder seams, that's always the weakness. This is the years before we could tape seams on jackets. So we got two Velcro used to come on a reel of about that diameter, and we used the curve of the Velcro to produce an underarm and got rid of the raglan sleeves. So we produced the mountain jacket that became, I think, probably, Peter Lockie at Berghaus might dispute this, but I think we probably had the best-selling PU coated jacket. And within a year, for seasonal reasons, the sailing market was a summer business. The outdoor market was year-round. Within a year, we dropped all the sailing, because we'd done trousers and smock tops and things by then. We dropped all those, and we were firmly into the outdoor market.
It's fair to say, though, it wasn't something that was completely unknown to us, because we'd both been in the Scouts. We'd both been in the school where you did where you chose to do the D.A.V. Awards, so we'd done that sort of thing. So, but it was just amazing how quickly we decided that, you know, this was where our future lied, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, once something starts with creditors and debtors, you owe money to Carrington Performance for fabric, you've got machinists, you've got employees. Very difficult to turn around and say, "Hey, you know what? I don't like this very much." Yeah, so you're on the wagon's rolling.
You can't jump off.
So for someone like me, it was a bit of a golden era for the outdoor world. I mean, these guys' book sort of illustrates that perfectly as well. What was the scene like? Because you were all talking to the other brands, weren't you? You were all kind of mates and stuff.
To a certain extent.
Oh, yeah, maybe not.
it was cutthroat. Our background was, we both come, despite what Simon says in terms of our families, you know, times were hard. So our background was that things had to be cheaper. So our starting premise is to undercut the competition. And if you come from that background, that's the way you enter into, you know, to life, really. And so it took us probably 10 years to stop thinking in terms of undercutting what Berghaus were doing or what everybody else was doing, and say, look, let's do our own thing. And then Anne Carter, who is here. Anne, are you here? Yeah, there she is. Anne was our first designer, and we just gave her a free rein. Probably a year went by, nothing substantial came out. I don't want to
No.
But
She's definitely
the investment. Well,
So you get to the tribute.
Yeah.
but Anne was subsequently responsible for the underarm cut that became the Torridon, which everybody sees as, you've probably got a picture of it here somewhere, this triangle underneath, but that isn't it. It's the forward movement of the sleeve going forward, and that revolutionised our business. I have to give Anne the credit.
Yeah.
Can I ask, from your point, how was the trade changing at that point, going into the transition of employing a designer? Because you'd come from a world where that wasn't a thing, and then now you've got a designer. How did that come about?
I think John decided that he couldn't come with designs anymore, from being completely honest.
I think I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but the strength of anybody in business is knowing their limitations. So Elon Musk might be able to help design a space rocket, but he can't certainly fly it. You know what I mean? So it's just a case of constantly recognizing when you've reached the limit of your ability and try and employ somebody who is better than you. And I have to say, everybody certainly was better than me in the middle management, upper management level.
But John is running himself down there, because John was quite often the person who came up with the idea that moved it forward. So he would say, well, we were making 4-ounce mountain jackets, and we were turning them out like there's no tomorrow, sort of hundreds every month. And it was John who'd say, well, you know, we've got this decent design here now on them, but we're still painting adhesive on them, doping them to make the seams waterproof. I think it's about time we sort of started sealing all the seams with tape, sort of thing. And then you might kind of say that to Anne, so design, can you alter designs like that? Or you'd work with Anne.
Yeah.
But I think the people quite often at the top of a business are the people who are kind of think of the direction it should go. And then they have the people underneath that can make that happen. And they have to be able to make sure that those people can do it and can do it well.
But I think, to answer your question, what had happened is the volumes had grown to the point that Berghaus, Ultimate Equipment, perhaps, Sprayway, Low Alpine, you hit volumes where you can start to work with the fabric manufacturers. So Gore came along. We were very early adapter. Gore went to Mountain Equipment and Berghaus first. We were probably third in. We were very financially independent, which really helped with the relationships with WL Gore. And it meant that we started taking their standard taffeta product, which everybody was using. But as soon as you could start to hit certain numbers in terms of fabric volume, you could start to dye to your own colours and differentiate your product. And again, going back to Anne's involvement, she was a great colourist. She knew, we worked closely together. She knew what we were trying to achieve. So you could differentiate your product by hitting the numbers. So I'm sure it happens in every industry. Once you get to a certain point, you can accelerate growth. And those people who can't get to that point will never get to it. And we reached it. And that was a real triggering moment. And then, of course, the next big one was Far East manufacturer. And we were slightly behind the curve on that one as well. But we caught up in the end. And again, Sarah's here. How much in the early years, Sarah would have spent 3-4 months a year in Hong Kong?
Quite a long time.
Yeah. And your fellow team as well, yeah. So that, again, was a huge sea change, as the whole industry. And again, those companies that couldn't hit the numbers weren't going to be able to source from the Far East. And we had fleece made in Portugal. Gary, you went out to Portugal a number of times, didn't you?
Yes.
So those key points changed things dramatically as well. And then I suppose the other thing would be the retail trade itself.
I was going to rewind it a little bit. I didn't ask you about the name. How did you come up with the name, or were there any other options you thought of?
No. Well, I think the name, to be fair, is Simon's idea.
We're not really sure, actually.
We were dinghy sailing, and we wanted a name which was representative of something to do with sailing, but not tie us down, because we really didn't know where it was going to go, and it just felt right. We just messed about with words, and it came up.
Just worked.
Yeah.
And who designed the font and the logo?
That was Mike Owen at Elmwood. Mike was, again, a bit like Sarah in Hong Kong. Mike was at Sprayway 2-3 days a week. He was major involvement with the brand. And then Alison Hargreaves came along, and Mike worked closely on that project, worked closely with Anne on all sorts of stuff. So we had a huge creative input from outside the business as well as in.
And going back to the colours, so the Torridon, that was kind of like a bit of a landmark product for you, and it was very colourful. And like you say, Anne was choosing the colours. What was influencing that choice of colours? It wasn't just being seen in the outdoors, was it? Or was it?
No, this will demonstrate my kind of competitiveness, but Berghaus, with their lightning jacket, was dominating. Well, that was the number one Gore-Tex seller, and we had to come up with a product that would compete with it. And again, Anne's brief was, this is the jacket. It's a £200 price. Well, it wasn't then. It was probably 150 quid, 120 quid price point. This is what you've got to do, and come up with a product. Our margin was down from where we would have been, but it was such a superior product. And once that hit the shops, there was no turning back.
It's also my role was far more admin and figures, making things add up. And it doesn't take much longer to make a jacket that is 3 times as much as a PU jacket. So, you know, it's a bit like going into a shop to retail and saying, would you prefer to sell a £100 item to somebody or a £300 item? It can take the same amount of time. So as far as I was concerned, I was over the moon that we were going in this direction. You know, we were selling the same number of jackets, well, they were loads more expensive.
Did the holidays start getting?
Yeah, it was just, you know, and we were, as John put it in a very polite way, that we were kind of well financed or whatever. Making a profit was very, very important to us from the early years on, and we absolutely always made a profit. So we, I'm not saying we hit our budgets every year, but we generally sort of at the end of the year we got to the we've got there, or we've got 90% there, sort of thing.
You rose up.
Yes.
So I know you're both keen sailors, but what about the outdoors yourselves? How far did you guys go out in terms of like mountains and hills and stuff? Were you R&D and stuff yourself?
Yes, we did. Simon to a greater extent than myself, I have to say. But the outdoor retailers broke into two types, just like the outdoor manufacturers. There were climbers who opened like Troll, for instance, or even Berghaus, Peter and Gordon Davison were outdoor people. The retailers fell into the same groups. There was those who were very commercial minded and those who were climbers. So if I'd go make an appointment to go and see a retailer, they wanted to know which routes I'd climbed, or, you know, da-di-da-di-da. And I hadn't climbed them.
Did you make any up?
No, but there are
M1, M6.
There's 3 retailers who I'm greatly honoured to have seen tonight. There's Ellis, there's Mike from Outdoor Action, Ross from Cunningham's in Ambleside, who also were commercial retailers. They all businesses still exist today, haven't been taken over by JD Sports or Mike Ashgrove.
Hooray! Yeah, round of applause. Yeah.
And these type of retailers were receptive to looking at a product that was better than what was on the market. And I applaud them. They came without prejudice and we sold them. And it took a long time to break down the barriers with other retailers.
I think just a slight addition to what John said, because he put it very correctly. Of the two of us, I was probably the one, and still am, a very, very keen hill walker. And we're talking about being formed 1974. 1975, my wife, who's still my wife here, went to Bangor University in North Wales, and absolutely every weekend I never missed for 3 years. We used to go walking every single Sunday in the hills. So that was absolutely great for trying stuff out and seeing how stuff was, and, you know, giving one to one of your mates to try this sort of thing.
I was just if I could just,
of course, mate, go for it. Yeah,
just briefly there. It was interesting that you both came from Flixton, and we're talking about walking and dates. And I can't recall the date, but I know Flixton Hall. Is that place? So I think it was in the late 1800s. There was a case which was way before the Kinder trespass. There was a very important access case regarding footpaths around Flixton Hall. So it's kind of interesting that 2 guys from Flixton going forward made a product to be used in the outdoors, because Flixton it's not known, but Flixton's
it's not that hilly, is it?
It's not that hilly, but bizarrely, Flixton has an important role within the history of access to paths and out the outdoors way before Kinder.
Yeah, it's in the DNA. And do you remember the first time seeing someone wearing Sprayway out in the hills?
Oh yeah, I mean, I absolutely still love it. I just can't. My wife and I, we have one more walk to do and we'll have finished all the Wainwrights. And I absolutely love it when we go to the Lake District and people, especially if there's like 2 or 3 of them in a group, I think that's absolutely great, sort of thing. I can't stop myself thinking, God, that's, I never say anything to them at all. But I do feel, I feel like hugging them. I still think today, that's great.
It keeps you out walking, does it?
Yeah, but it's still, I still love it. I've got to be completely honest. I went walking last week somewhere in Castleton, and there's a shop with a complete Sprayway window there, and there's a picture of me in the window actually. So I think,
Stood outside signing autographs.
My wife's saying, "Stand in front of it. I'll take your photo. We'll show the kids," sort of thing. So yeah, I still get a fantastic kick out of it. Yes, when it's on the mountain.
Do you have a question?
Well, we talked a lot about waterproof. So what were the first steps out into other different sorts of products for you?
We tried loads of stuff. We tried putting first aid kits together. Camping. I won't bore you with the amount of things we tried and said, hang on, this isn't the right. We did industrial clothes. We actually got the contract for Greater Manchester Police Waterproofs, 1,600 jackets. They gave us we submitted a quote, got it was a tender document, got the order. We were too busy, but we subconned it out and supplied it. But we tried loads of different things and said, no, that's not working, pull back. So these are in the very early days. So don't get me wrong, this is kind of early mid 70s sort of thing. It's not the 80s and 90s. By then it was clear what we were doing. So, but fleece obviously was huge. And our turnover in 2098 was about 10 million, of which 3 million was fleece. And within, the outdoor retailers here might know better than me, because obviously I'd left at that point, but the market fell dramatically at that point. But so 30% of our business was Malden Mills. Both the Windblock product, which was immensely successful, and the 200, 300 gram weight fabrics.
I must say, one of the days, which was not one of my better days in the business, was, we tried lots of things, camping accessories and stuff, and they hadn't, we dropped them. We didn't. And when John said to me, well, I think this fleece stuff's really going to take off, so I think we should make that. So I said, all right, yeah, okay. He said, but it's a bit more complicated than you think, Simon. So I said, all right. So he said, well, yeah, we're going to have to buy the fabric from Boston in America, and it's going to have to come by ship. So it's going to take a couple of weeks to get to us. I said, right, yeah. But he said, but they've got a sales office here and they'll sell to us. He said, and they still work in yards all the time. So we're going to have to do all our stuff on the computer and then turn it back into yards. And there's 13% duty when we get the fabric here. So we're going to have a duty account because we weren't importing anything, sort of thing. And quite a load of other things. And I said, and you and Anne think that this fleece stuff's going to take off, do you, sort of thing? Me with my sort of like, and I was thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? And of course, like all the other things that they came to, sort of thing,
Yeah, but every other manufacturer was facing the same issues. Simon and his team, great credit that, all right, we're doing this, we'll have a go. Gary set up production lines in the factory in Manchester. We had 36,000 square feet. Gary was the production director. It was his problem to produce. We bought amazing amounts of kit, didn't we? Do you remember cover stitch machines and all the rest of it, Gary? Yeah. And but Simon's team made all that back stuff work. And again, the success of us as a business was, the design team, the marketing team, we had a great sales team. They could all deliver at the front end, but you have to have somebody like him at the back end. And, I think, well,
we were lucky. Our skills complemented each other very,
correct.
very well.
Yeah.
And we always got on well
Yeah,
with each
most
other.
of the time.
Yeah, most of the time, yeah.
What was the best fight you ever had? I'm joking. Go on. No, here we go.
No. Probably only a few hundred hours were spent on deciding whether to have lines across the A's on there. So there's John and myself who each owned half the business, and we had two other directors, Gary, the production director here, and another guy who was the sales director who's sadly passed away. And myself and Gary thought that they should have lines across them. And John and the sales directors liked that, and we had a few discussions about whether.
Yeah, John was right. But it sounds like quite a place to work. It was like everyone I've spoke to about it said it was like a family atmosphere. It was a lovely place to work, and one of you, I think it was you, described it as a perfect team. Was it like that? Was it a bit like Mike Baldwin's factory? You're all just loads of Mancs having a laugh.
Well, I've never been in Mike Baldwin's factory. I think we had a great culture. We didn't drive people hard. We believed in quality of life. Unlike if you read Elon Musk's autobiography, you just, oh, wow. I think when he took Twitter over, there were 2,500 coders and computer people, and he wanted to get that down to 30. Anyway, I digress. Yeah. So we had a good lifestyle approach to our running the business. I think it paid off. Yeah.
We were also probably lucky, and of course that it was the days before social media and mobile telephones. So when you went home on a Friday, nobody could get you on a... Well, actually, that is incorrect. I have to say that there were quite a number of people who had my home telephone number who were under instructions. Basically, if they were anywhere in the world and they had a problem, and I remember somebody here phoning me up from they were ill somewhere in China, and how do I get a doctor, sort of thing. And there were probably about 8 to 10 people who knew my home telephone number. And I don't mind what time you phone me, day or night. If you're somewhere working in the world and you've got a problem, phone me up, sort of thing. And I think that actually, in a way, gained a sort of a badge of respect for not phoning you, if you understand what I mean. But people felt good that they could.
Yeah, either that or they were just scared of you.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were. And for me, Sprayway's a brand that it was part of Mancunian subculture as well. It's part of, what the youth started wearing in the 80s and the 90s. What did that mean to the business, and when do you remember seeing that change?
Yeah, I don't think the outdoor industry were looking for that as a business opportunity. Again, the retailers here would explain what happened to them, but it certainly, the Manchester culture and it spread out was huge. We had a Hydrodry product retailing at 100 quid. The Reflex, which mimicked the underarm of the Torridon, and the sales of that were just phenomenal. And unfortunately, retailers like Brigham's, etc., in Manchester were getting windows broken in just to nick £100 jacket out. So well, our factory was. We had a period of time where we had scaffolding up before we bought the building, and it was virtually 2-3 times a week we'd get somebody climbing up the scaffold, breaking in, police with dogs, and it was just dreadful. Yeah. And we purposely never displayed Sprayway on the building. There was nothing that said where we were, and yet we were getting break-ins all the time. Bellis, were you the same? Yeah.
There's nothing you can do when you're making a great product. People are going to smash windows to get it, I guess.
But it wasn't Sprayway. It was outdoor clothing was fashionable, and again, the retailers would be a better place to explain what was happening than I would. But it wasn't really good because it was only going to come to an end. It wasn't forever. It was only going to last 6 months, 12 months, or whatever.
Did you think that at the time as well? Did it make you feel uneasy?
No, we knew it was short-lived, yeah.
Because didn't you have a sample sale and there was riots as well?
Sorry?
Wasn't there a sample sale and there was a riot?
I can't remember.
Duncan told me that. He probably made it up.
Yeah, no, he probably made it up.
Yeah. You started it, didn't you? So let's talk about ambassadors as well, because what sort of people did you work with? Because that was quite an important part of Sprayway's story, wasn't it? The people, who wore it actually on expeditions and stuff.
It was. The range of fabrics available to all the manufacturers was so limited. You could only give them so much. Once lighter weight fabrics and Windstopper from Gore came along, that helped a lot. We weren't a natural brand for the alpinists and the Himalayan climbers to go to. We did supply expeditions, but we weren't the first choice, I'll be honest, because we didn't have that, if you like, that credibility of being a climbing brand. Alison Hargreaves came along to us along with her husband, and it was an absolute perfect match. I could see it straight away. We negotiated a relatively modest contract with her, persuaded Simon and his colleagues to up my marketing budget. Words to Duncan's ears here, you see. So we upped the marketing budget, and we'd realised, and Anna and the team had realised that there was a market for women-specific clothing, and we'd already spent probably 3 or 4 years doing that. So Lady Torridon, I call her lady, but you wouldn't use that terminology anymore these days, but we had separate sizing for women, which most brands hadn't. And over trousers were made to fit and all the rest of it. So Alison joining us was just perfect. And she was just a wonderful person.
She's charming to work.
Yeah. So she was really the catalyst for that huge 1990, mid-90s growth through to when we left in 99, 98.
Brilliant. We sort of takes us to the book as well. Why did you write the book? Because if no one's got it or seen it, is it available in the foyer to buy?
Yes, it's available in the foyer to buy. £45 for one, 2 for 90.
Bargain. It's an amazing book, though, honestly. But
how much is 4?
180.
We did ask ourselves that question a few times. Why are we doing this? But I think one of the beauties of it was brands like Sprayway opening up their archives to us. I mean, I was convinced that there'd be treasures in there, and not just in terms of design or climbing history, but just in terms of who we are, why we go out into the countryside, how this has helped us, how it's developed the popular passion for the outdoors. And, looking back at Sprayway's catalogues, at the memorabilia, at the postcards from the people you supplied things to, it illuminated something for me. And also then looking at the clothing in detail and photographing it too. It's been quite a trip, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing, really. I think, from the point of view of the book, you've said about a dream team. Max comes from a writing and publishing background. I'm primarily a photographer, but I've been involved in the outdoors from being, 2, 3, 4. My parents were big outdoor people, and I worked in an outdoor shop in Blackpool in the 80s. Ellis will know Peter Gentile that opened the Alpine Centre Alpine Centre in Blackpool. Yeah. So I worked in the Alpine Centre in the 80s. So I've always been a bit of an outdoor kind of gear nerd, really. So between the pair of us, we made this kind of dream team, really. And I have to say, with all the brands we visited, I think one of the best archives was Sprayway's, really. It was wonderfully organised. And when we were handling stuff, it was amazing to see those kind of postcards from the expeditions, signed by Joe and Pete Boardman and that sort of thing. And when we were in the archives at Mountain Heritage Trust and the Scottish Mountain Heritage Collection, it was amazing to kind of handle these garments that had been, worn by Doug Scott and Bonington and Joe Tasker. And when you're laying those sort of garments out to photograph, if you've been involved with mountaineering from being a teenager like I have, you're holding these kind of objects that are just like amazing. I mean, it's like holding Ringo Starr's guitar or
or drumsticks
or someone. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, he was.
Probably a better guitarist than a drummer, to be fair.
Well, that's what they say, isn't it? He was the second best drummer in the Beatles, which is why I took up the guitar. So, no, but so these objects was remarkable to handle this stuff that that had been on these incredible expeditions, and the postcards that are in the Sprayway archive. They're sent by Joe and Pete Boardman and so on, from these cutting edge expeditions. And I think sometimes, we're talking about people, how these products became high street products, worn by people for walking the dogs and in the 90s, football fans and so on the terraces. But fundamentally, a lot of these garments were made for people, to wear outdoors on the hill. And it was important that it was a high quality product that made a difference when you were out on the hill at the end of the day. And, and that's important to remember. I think it's the key to it.
And did you find, because a lot of outdoor brands don't like looking backwards, do they? It's always like the next thing sort of thing. Did you find a lot of brands didn't have an archive or didn't have a very impressive one?
Yeah, I mean, some of them were quite kind of disorganised, weren't they, I would say. Sprayway had a great archive, Duncan's and the team there have done a great job, getting it all racked up and so on. And Ian, really well organised. Berghaus have got a reasonable archive, but a lot of the brands, it's just like a box basically. There's somewhere in the corner of the warehouse.
Yeah, I think that was going back to what you're saying. That the interesting question for me is, why are we seeing this clothing that was developed for the outdoors on the high street, walking the dog on the terraces? And it's to an extent it's being marketed to us for this. So to be able to go back and delve through and look at it was a real privilege, really, and to understand why things had been made, how they'd been made, and those kind of processes.
It's that functionality as well. I don't know if it's like a Mancunian thing, but we used to go in Alpenstock in Stockport, and we'd buy fleeces and stuff, and they'd be like, "What's it for?" Yeah. And they'd be like, "Shelley's Laserdome Friday night." Like, what? They didn't get it, but But why were we buying? I don't know. It's just because it's good product, I guess. But there's some archive pieces out there, aren't there? Including a camo one. Where's the camo one come from? Was there any military connection? Did you ever supply stuff for the military?
No, there was the Falklands War in '82, and Gore had produced a disruptive print, as had Carrington Performance Fabrics, and there was a demand. We never supplied the armed forces, never attempted to, but there was a demand post the Falklands for disruptive print.
So it was a bit of a trend.
It's just almost. Away, yeah. Same jacket, just in disruptive print. It didn't last long.
I still want one.
There were also certain kind of interesting things that we found that while we were shooting in archives, you'd be able to open, you'd look inside the garment basically, and we shot Joe Tasker's jacket from Conga in the early '80s, and it had Joe written in the label, with his hand, which is kind of poignant because the guy died on Everest. I mean, it's so there's an element of poignancy with some of these garments, and you got to see how big they were, how small they were. I mean, Alison's suits, she was quite a slightly built woman, wasn't she? So when you're handling these kind of archive items that have been worn by these, big names in the mountaineering world, you kind of got a sense of their physicality and their size because you were handling the garments. But what I remember when we were shooting the Sprayway things, one thing that struck me was looking through some of the garments, and I just happened to turn over one of the labels, and it had the name of the person that had stitched it in the back. And what was interesting was that it was the name was Azim Khan. And I thought that was really interesting. So in the 70s, there's a lot of discussion now about equality and diversity in the outdoors. And in the 60s and 70s, there might not have been a lot of black and brown faces on the outdoors. But what I found fascinating was that a lot of the machinists working in these factories were of South Asian heritage, and they were making these garments for people to wear in the outdoors, which I think is a really interesting kind of historical fact.
Mr. Khan, as opposed to Miss Khan, it was male.
Yeah.
What was interesting, we'd when we would just do PU jackets, they were made in what you would in textile terminology is make through. So each machinist could, because there was only a lock stick sewing machine involved in making it, could make the whole garment. So it was make through. So we thought, what a great idea. can put the machinist name. So we had labels produced for every machinist. And we had a machinist certainly when we were in Chester Street, who was in her 80s. Her name was Queenie Jones. And Tony Rathburn, who had a shop in Keswick, visited once, and he said, "I'd like to meet Queenie Jones." Do you remember?
Yeah.
And we took him up, and he met Queenie Jones.
There you go.
And,
So Sprayway's next jacket is going to be called a Queenie.
Did she say, "Piss off, I'm sewing"?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on piecework. Get lost.
Give me my lunch break. I think we're going to open it up to the audience, ask a few questions. I just want to ask you personally if you've got a favourite piece or a piece that really symbolises Sprayway for you.
Torridon jacket.
Torridon.
Yeah, without question.
Ask Anne. Anne, you answer my question.
Yes, you designed most of them.
Come on. Yeah, of course you can. What is your most? Seeing as you designed at least 70% of the output of Sprayway from your joining. Yeah. ISPO. Do you remember? Was it Guy from Globetrotter in Hamburg? And then bought a load of them.
I think the colours you chose were absolutely phenomenal, Anne. No joke aside, did you ever were you a clubber? Did you ever go out raving or anything? Or was it just got a good eye? Yeah.
I was from the fashion background, so for me, it wasn't anything unusual putting those colours together.
Well, you did an amazing job anyway. Right, let's open it up. Any questions from the audience? Don't be shy.
Steps, is it about climbing on the Sprayway one?
No.
What is it?
Steps.
They were big fans, and I believe
six,
you've got all the
7,
albums,
8.
haven't you, signed?
It's just the logo, and I mean that was. It's much more complicated than that, because that was the corporate design, but behind that was about 3 or 4 other designs in that corner representing different activity levels, and we used to get letters from nerdy outdoor people asking what they all represented. It was fantastic. So it created an intrigue and difference, but the Steps was the corporate brand, and it's exactly what's used now. The one, I don't use any. I've been out of the business for 25 years. What's the flat one?
Duncan?
Ian? What's he talking about?
I think you've actually basically stick with that one now, don't you? Or that? Yes. Yeah, because I suppose a lot of people would say it was a bit confusing having different ones in the corner there now. Yes.
The one with the circle with the line through, it's supposed to be Tiger's Arm on the left. Yeah, on the left, so the guy's arm at the top. It's supposed to be. That was one of the Tiger's Arms, yeah.
Yeah, Colin, tell it, Drew. Go on.
Upfront discussions that were had when they brought out that. I think of it as an orange with sunglasses on. They were trying to tell us it was a fusion of air, fire, water, all sorts of nonsense.
It's also been called the inverted sperm as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to just confirm that was after our ownership of the company that came along, and I remember seeing it for the first time and thinking, they bought the company off us and they paid us so much for the brand and whatever, and now they've altered it, and can't really understand this, but hey,
That's showbiz. Yeah. Next question. Coddy, go on.
You design hoods, because the hoods are the best.
Yeah.
Just with what I call a storm flap and be able to pull the toggles in. As a youth, I used to like them because all you could see was your eyes.
No face, no case.
Why is that, Lee?
Just loved it. Just that design, and nothing beats like the wide hood, the storm flap, the adjustable pull cords. No one's been.
In the book, £45 for one, 90 for two. There's an advert for a jacket called the Armageddon. There was a brand called Armageddon that came from Burnley. Who knows?
Sounds about right.
When I scanned the ad from these, I scanned magazines from 64 to 1999 over Scanmageddon. It was Scanmageddon. It was enormous job.
Scandinavia.
Yeah, so this Armageddon jacket has this incredible hood that comes out about 8 inches when it's zipped out from the face. It's the most mental thing ever. I don't know what the deal was with the weather in Burnley, but
Just to see the less of Burnley, I guess, isn't it? The less you see, the better, really.
tunnel vision in
Burnley
Burnley's
avoidance
best
sort.
away.
Because we know of them as like, we call them a storm flat. We were never in any storms. We just wore them because.
A couple of police lineups, maybe.
That might have been you, Neil, not me.
Don't know what you mean. Next question.
Was it Jackie? Yeah. I think just going back to the hood question, as a generalisation, if you think back to the kind of 80s, Berghaus in particular were importing skis. Ski was massive in the UK. You'd go to the winter show and they had skis everywhere. They had ski boots. They were doing rucksacks. They were doing everything. We just did clothing. And I talked about us diverging into other things and retracting back. We learnt our lesson quickly and just said, look, let's focus on that. So all the team, everybody, Colin, we went on outdoor trips as a whole team. The whole focus was not what's the rucksack doing, what's the sleeping bag doing, what's the tent doing. It was purely clothing focused. So I think to a certain extent, the reason we got those things right was because all our attention was focused on one product group rather than a diversification. And Wine Mountain Equipment got the insulation end of it right as well, and RAB subsequently as well. Yeah.
One of the things we were talking about before everyone came in was how things became incredibly over-engineered, and we saw that doing the book. When the Cagules came along in the late 60s and 70s, they were basically just shapeless bags with a zip in, basically. But then by the mid-90s, the amount of work that went into these garments was astonishing. Pleats and fabric and pockets and all the rest of it. They were absolutely the picture of the two of you outside the Wasdale Head where you're wearing the TL jacket. The amount of work that went into those and the amount of engineering and complexity was incredible. And you really kind of saw that over. You can see that over the, and then it dropped off again. Whereas now things have become very simple and pared down.
I think though, when you're talking about that was probably at the part of the time when people were moving manufacturing to the Far East, and one of the things which when you looked at we took, say, a Torridon jacket that we could make in Manchester, and we had exactly the same product made from the same patterns in China, and you were making a larger margin on it. But it was interesting when you looked at the costs, the fabric would be the same, and there was that, but the labour was just a fraction of the cost of it. So you could suddenly put far, far more labour into a jacket, right? And it was costing you less from the labour point of view, a fraction of it. And I think that's why people suddenly went mad. Everybody had been trying to churn out as many jackets as they could. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep the sewing. And suddenly these people were saying, we can put an extra pocket on. Why don't you put a matte pocket in? We can put one on here for sort of thing. We can do that for virtually next to nothing extra in the sewing labour. So,
One of the other things that came about as well, doing the research for all these magazines, was how the details in magazines and things like zips and press studs came about. There's in one review from the late 60s, Tom Waghorn, that used to do the reviews in Climber magazine, he was delighted when he was reviewing one garment to see that the manufacturer had started to use the new Velcro. So things that we take now as being ubiquitous and everyday, there was a time when things were, new and innovative.
Yeah, Velcro was a Swiss product under patent by a company called Selectus in this country. And when the patent ran out and other manufacturers could produce Velcro, we carried on buying from Velcro. The price halved, literally halved, didn't it? Another one which came after our departure was waterproof zips. And Anne, to her credit, was asking YKK to look into trying to produce a waterproof zip. Well, probably back in the early 90s, I would think, Anne. Yeah? Can you remember? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, because you're into diving, weren't you? So there were, again, stepping stones in other respects other than just the fabrics. Yeah.
Any more questions?
That was the actual gram weight of the 2 ripstop nylons. Well, we worked with Perseverance Mill as a joint venture with Gore, but we could use the face fabrics for the Zest windproof, which we put a light elastomer coating on, and then Hydrodry as well with breathable polyurethane. So it was a great effort between Gore, Perseverance, and ourselves, and it gave us a huge boost, and it brought really tough lightweight fabrics to the market. It was really good. Yeah.
When you started the brand, did you ever think you would get to 50 years?
No. Well, who knows? I mean, I don't think we ever thought about it in those terms. I don't think anybody does, do they?
No, we were just two like 19-year-old lads who, dropped out of college and the Navy, and we gave it a go, and we were, I gave my job up first after a couple of weeks, and John worked for about another month, and we bought a clapped out old Escort van, and as I say, we were selling within 6 weeks. We were selling 100 jackets a week, and we just kind of, we just couldn't believe it really.
Brilliant. Any more? Oh, at the back.
First of all, I just want to say well done for doing it, right?
Thank you.
You stuck at it, you stuck it hard, you quit your job, you bought a van, whatever. But I wanted to see if you had any, this isn't me by the way, but if you had any advice for anybody looking to do similar kind of thing with similar kind of resource, and then also what are you up to now?
Right, so no mortgage, no wife, no kids, 2 18, 19-year-olds. And if we had, as you say, we had working capital of less than 5,000 quid. If we blew it in 6 months, so what? It didn't matter. And that ability to just not care at that point in time makes a huge difference. I think anybody who, has a mortgage to pay and has responsibilities, making those kind of lifestyle changes is so much, much harder, and particularly now. But I think we had it. We were lucky. We were at the right place, the right time, at the right age, and yeah, it just happened. So I don't know if that answers the question really, but that's
Just let me ask. You whatever you choose to do, you also need something that can be rolled out, expanded. So, lots of businesses can't. We could easily roll out our business, expand it. But you also have to have, and this is where we get on, you see lots of people, and I see it all the time, you see people with a good business idea, but they're possibly not good at running a business. When we got to the end, we had kind of 200 people work for us with all the problems of employing people like that. And you've got to be able to tackle all of those problems and enjoy them, really.
Nicely put.
She answered it better actually. You two have an amazing chemistry that answers the question massively, like you're two at different ends of the spectrum maybe about that.
Yeah.
Well done.
It's a Flixton thing.
I was going to ask, is there any products that you made that you thought was absolutely fantastic which didn't somehow take off, or anything you wish you'd pursued that you didn't?
there was loads of products we made that didn't take off. We never stopped messing around and experimenting, and we probably sampled fabrics more than anybody else. I mean, I just let the designers and the team have a free hand and just keep exploring. It was only in latter years that we started having design briefs. So we started to say, right, what is it the market is requiring? Let's create a brief for that product, and designers need to design to a brief. So the first 5-10 years, we just had a free hand. We just did things, tried fabrics. But you got to bear in mind that we're going from a point of a non-breathable polyurethane coated nylon, there was neoprene as well, to once Gore came along, and then subsequently Sympatex, and then all the other hydrophilic breathables, etc., then kind of the doors opened and we could go in certain directions. But it was fabric development that opened the doors, not what we were doing particularly. Don't know if that answers it either. I need another beer.
Yeah. Should we go and get a beer? Go on, you've got another question. Last question. Go on, mate.
And what was I going to say? I was just going to say, I mean, what's interesting about it looking back from now is that you're talking about these huge advances in materials, in construction, and that kind of thing. And really, that was probably a really incredible time to be designing stuff. Now, yes, advances are made, but it's much more incremental because of the work that you guys all did back then. It must have been an exciting time.
It was. It's interesting when you asked about some things that went wrong. One of the big things that went wrong is that after Gore had their initial big success with what you might call the standard Gore-Tex, which was available in that light blue, of course, at that particular time, we felt that the better a waterproof jacket is, the heavier it should be. So Gore immediately came out after that with a range of very heavy outer fabrics, the same Gore-Tex and the scrim lining it, and they were a complete failure, of course, because people didn't want that. But I think we thought that was one of the things that they did, that this is going to be the next sort of thing that didn't work.
Right, beer time. Let's give it up for these two legends.
Thank you.
And the other two legends on the end as well. Books available. Thanks for coming, everyone. Happy birthday, Sprayway. Nice one.
Happy birthday.
You beneath the captain.